Hey there again, Carson Hetty, going to the Salesman on Fire mailbag. Today's question: what are some common mistakes that you see salespeople make, and how can they be avoided? I'm also going to talk about mistakes that I've made, which I think is important. You got to own these as you continue to sharpen the axe. Number one for me was always poor time management. I remember when I started out as an account executive, and I would literally just chase everything. I chased everything like it was worth the same dollar value. I was going after the $1,000 opportunity just as diligently as the multi-million-dollar one because I thought I could just do it all. And the reality is, you can't. You've got to make sure that you've ironed out and outlined out your big rocks. What are the mountain moving opportunities and deals, and then are there ways that I can scale some of the lesser elements? And actually, this bridges into really well poor communication and follow up, because here's the thing: there's a lot of times where you might get an inquiry, a question from a customer, or just kind of a follow-up action item. Sometimes it's just as important to let them know that you got the mail and that you're on it, or maybe you copy in that other person that might be able to jump in and help. You can't go at it alone. Yet another one of the mistakes that I think a lot of salespeople make. But you've got to follow up. There's so much momentum that dies on the vine because we have this amazing meeting and then nothing, crickets. And there's studies out there that, the retention of great intel that's shared, I think you lose 50% of it within the first couple of weeks of, coming out of a meeting. So if you had a great meeting and then you don't talk again for 2 weeks and don't have any communication, guess what? That whole momentum that you had is dead. And that meeting was practically wasted. You've got to make sure that you follow up diligently right after the meeting. I remember being on trips where I'd have a great meeting, and then in the airport, I was sending the follow-ups and connecting the dots. We do an executive brief, and I'm sending a mail by the end of the day, pulling in all of the resources that I need and want to have as part of the next step. Shows the customer you're paying attention and that you care, but also it keeps momentum. And a lot of times that's our job. We got to make sure we keep momentum. Now, don't get me wrong, there's so many different things going on, so you definitely have to prioritize your time based on what matters most. But you've also got to look at your calendar. What are the meetings that you're having that aren't doing anything, that aren't moving the needle? I remember years ago, I would literally have these call cadences set up with these partners or customers. And I'm looking at these things. You got to take a balcony view of your business sometimes. And I'd say, nothing's happening here. Why are we getting on every week to just read each other the news of nothing? Like, you've got to be, what I keep going back to this. I did a podcast with Megan Reed about a year ago, and she calls it ruthless discipline of schedule. Love it. You got to have it. Sounding like everybody else. I see so many emails from salespeople to customers, and they all sound the same. I had one recently, somebody sent to me and they were like, can you give me feedback on this? And it's like, yeah, it's fine, but you sound like everybody else. Like, how is this going to stand out in the sea of emails that these customers get? Don't just sound articulate and pat yourself on the back. A lot of times customers will react and respond better if it's short, sweet, to the point. Make your ask, get to the point. You don't need to go up, show off, say everything that's great about you and your organization. That's not what's going to get their attention. By showing up with a unique perspective or a very tangible ask or a presentation of value, those are the types of things. Ask for a meeting, but do it with some actual oomph. What is going to be the reason why they should show up? What are they going to get out of this that's different than what everybody else is throwing at them all day, every day? Stop sounding like everybody else. The other one, only talking about what is so great about their product and their company. Come on. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. So the key element too, and don't try to go toe to toe with your competition's strengths because of your strengths. If your customer's going down a path, you're not going to win. You're not going to get them off of whatever they're doing by going toe to toe with the strengths of your competition. That's what made them sign to begin with. That's what they like. You're not going to win going to toe to toe with that. You've got to understand the opportunities and threats. It's that SWOT analysis of your competition. Understanding, what's weak. What do they dislike about that solution? And that's why all the more we need to get valuable intel from that organization so that we can build that momentum, so that we can, when we talk to an executive, hey, when I talk to your employees, when I talk to your teams, they're struggling with these elements, we can take care of that. That's what's ultimately going to de-risk the decision for them. Talking too much. Your customers should be talking far more than you are in these conversations. The thing is, they're the pro. They know their business better than you. You're like a doctor. You need to go in and you need to diagnose. You can't diagnose if you're the one doing all the talking. You need to hear the symptoms. You've got to make sure that you plant little seeds and questions to understand what is their current priorities, what's their 5-year plan, what's their mission statement, what is the intel that they're getting from their teams, what are gaps in their current processes, what challenges are they having around budgeting, or whatever it is. Whatever you're trying to go in and ultimately diagnose, you need to ask the questions that lead them on that path. That is how you're ultimately going to be able to effectively diagnose and make recommended next steps. Stop talking so much. Not understanding what matters most to the customer. This goes hand in hand with that. Understanding what is their risk. What does risk look like to them? But also, what is a win to them? These are the types of things. You've got to make your whole process about them. I also see, and I'm just giving a laundry list here, lack of empathy. Anytime a customer has pain, we've got to be there for them. Even if you're not an empathetic person, you've got to be able to play devil's advocate. You've got to be able to sit in their angst and their pain with them, because if you don't, you're never going to earn the right to be at their table. It's that simple. You've got to make sure that, even if you're in the wrong, even if it's justified, sometimes you've got to make sure that you can see things from their lens. That's a key element. And because if you do that and you sit in the angst and in the pain, especially when stuff goes awry or amiss, or there's a failure to deliver product or expectation, you got to be there. You got to be there for those types of things. You can't shy away from the tough times or the tough conversations. Also, ignoring objections, sometimes that are in plain sight, and sometimes that are those uncovering those hidden blockers, things that are the objection that they don't necessarily point out, but if they went down a path with your company before, or they explored your company before and they didn't do it, that's right there in front of you. You've got to dig a little bit more. What happened? What's going to be different this time? You've got to make sure you're able to win them over and influence them positively. Getting lost in price versus value. It's sometimes we get in our own way so much because we're afraid to tell the customer the price of a good. If they believe that this is a path they need to go on, they will invest. It's that simple. You've got to help them understand the pain that they're having today, the cost that pain is having, and then also what you're going to be able to alleviate. There's a lot of ways that we talk about this, right? Return on investment, things of that nature. Bottom line, you've got to make sure that you understand, you feel confident in conveying the price. We're going to be able to do X, 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 and X, and this is the outcome. This is the impact that's going to have to your organization, and your investment that we're asking is blank. Right. And then, of course, there's a negotiation. There's there's potential maybe for more investment that you're making. But the bottom line is, don't get caught up in price versus value. Failing to make the process all about the customer. We talked a little bit about that. The key is you've got to understand how they're thinking about this. What is their process? What is going to be meaningful for them? What gaps are you diagnosing today? Also, and we touched on this earlier, but going at it alone, not seeking out help. If you're a lone wolf, you're only going to go so far. And frankly, you win alone, but you die alone. And that's the key, is you've got to make sure that you've got no surprises. I've learned sometimes the hard way, if there's a red flag, if there's a compete scenario that blows up, you got to ring the bell. You got to tell your leadership immediately. Don't ever have your manager have a surprise. Make sure that they're well read in on what's going on, and you raise the alarm bell when there's something negative going on, just like you make sure to communicate out to everybody that might be impacted or influenced or be a part of a deal when you get an actionable intel. Make sure you're reading everybody in and they're rowing with you. Lastly, not seeking out ways to get better. When I was a seller, I wanted to know, if there's a metric that I'm not blowing out of the park, but somebody else is, I need to be talking to this person. Because guess what? It's not going to take food off the table for them to share their secrets with me. And if there's something by chance that I can share with them, I've always done that. freely. I meet with so many sellers, so many teams globally, and I give all of my tips and tactics and ways that I go out and master some of these metrics, because frankly I've been so blessed and fortunate to get that from others. What I love about the game, the art of the game, the sales arena, is that there's so much honor amongst the noble knights of the selling game. We all want to master our craft if we're going to be greats. And I think one of the biggest things that we fail to do sometimes is not seeking out ways to actively get better at what we do. If you're not up leveling, you're standing pat in the race. Somebody's going to pass you. What are your thoughts? What are the biggest mistakes that you see salespeople make, and how can they be avoided? Thanks for watching.